So it's Easter Monday, and as you probably know by now, Pope Francis has passed away. May he rest in peace. And I was thinking, one of the last things that he did before his death was to take a brief meeting with J.D. Vance, after which he had one of his cardinals lecture the vice president about compassion. I really love that part of the story. And I was thinking, upon learning of Pope Francis's passing, I thought about that meeting, and I was thinking, maybe the reason that he took that meeting, because he had to know that he was nearing the end. Maybe he decided to take that meeting so that he can look one last time at the face of evil in this world before leaving it, and then having it lectured about compassion. Now, I don't say this to be flippant. I don't say this as some sort of cheap dig at J.D. Vance. I mean it seriously. Because when we talk about evil in this world, it's not just the shady characters that you might conjure up in your mind, people hiding in the shadows of society, waiting to take advantage and do harm on innocent, unsuspecting people. Not all those who do evil in this world, are in the Jack the Ripper mold or something like that. No, what's more often true of evil in this world is that it's perpetrated by people who look like J.D. Vance. Not the shady, dirty characters, but the people dressed in suits and ties. Wealthy people in positions of power. And that's been the case throughout human history. It's the people in power who have the ability and the means to inflict pain and destruction and perpetuate evil on a massive scale that have inflicted the most damage in this world. It's people like J.D. Vance. And in meeting with J.D. Vance, that's what he was doing. He was looking at the face of evil in the world. J.D. Vance is an embodiment of that. J.D. Vance is a representative of a cruel, and he's part of a cruel, corrupt regime here in the United States that is perpetuating evil, that is engaging in acts of cruelty for political benefit. And I think also because the man at the top actually enjoys, I think it goes beyond politics for this man. For Donald Trump, so much of this is about vengeance and hurting people. I think he gets off on it. I think he personally enjoys hurting people. If that is not evil, I don't know what is. Now, J.D. Vance, at one time, and probably still does if we're going to be honest, recognized Donald Trump for the evil person, the malevolent force that he is. He referred to Donald Trump as the H word, mustache guy. Don't want to get in trouble here on YouTube, but you know who I'm referring to. That was J.D. Vance. But J.D. Vance, saw his path to power through that person. And so he now supports and defends the evil perpetrated by that man. J.D. Vance is now part of that. So J.D. Vance very much represents he very, very much represents evil in the world. He is one of its faces. And so that is what Pope Francis was looking at when he was looking into the eyes of J.D. Vance. And you know, what's going on in this country, I don't know how you can describe as anything other than evil. We are treating people in this country with no humanity, no decency. We've been talking now for weeks about the case of Abrego Garcia, who was kidnapped. This wasn't a deportation. This wasn't a valid arrest. There was no arrest warrant. He was afforded no due process. So it's not a deportation what happened to him. And by the way, I was driving in the car this morning. I had MSNBC on, satellite, and I heard Mika Brzezinski talking to a guest saying, should we even be calling this deportation? Deportation is a process. This is a legal process. This is not deportation. Shouldn't we be calling it something else like kidnapping? And I'm thinking, yeah, finally, I've been saying this for weeks. This is not deportation. By the way, it's important that we describe things correctly and use the correct terms. In politics, words matter. And if you are using the other side's terminology, you're losing. You're falling into their trap. Do not call what is happening in cases like that of Abrego Garcia. Do not refer to that as a deportation, because you're tacitly admitting that it is to some degree legitimate, because deportation is a legal process. Abrego Garcia was not afforded a legal process. What happened to him was not a legal process. It is not within our laws. It is outside of our laws. It was illegal. It was a kidnapping. And as I've talked about in a previous video, there should be criminal investigations taking place in the states right now where these illegal kidnappings are occurring. For Abrego Garcia, Maryland authorities should be investigating this as a crime, because it is. Just because agents of the government may be committing the crime does not make it any less criminal. Anyway, what we're seeing all around this country, in that case and many, many others, is nothing less than evil. This is a legal resident, or he was a legal resident, still is. Not here, but I mean is as in still alive, I hope. He's a legal resident of this country, given permission to be here after his case was heard by an immigration judge. He has an American citizen wife, an American citizen special needs child. He was kidnapped off of the streets of Maryland. No due process, sent to a prison camp. Apparently to spend the rest of his life. That's evil. How else can you describe that? Things like this are happening all across the country. I'm sure there are countless stories we've never heard of where this is happening. Now that the courts are trying to rein this in, the criminal Trump regime is going to go more underground with this, so that we don't see what they're doing, so that the courts can't get involved. If we don't know it's happening, no one can file a lawsuit. No one can get it into court. So I bet a lot is happening that we don't even know about. But it's not just these illegal kidnappings and renditions. American citizens are being detained because of the color of their skin. I talked to you yesterday about a story out of Arizona. A 19-year-old man, American citizen, was walking, got himself a little lost, and he was stopped by Border Patrol, accused of entering the country illegally because he didn't have his immigration papers on him. Why would he? He's an American citizen. So they threw him in jail. I think it was like 10 days. He sat in jail, an American citizen who did nothing wrong. He was finally released after his family produced his birth certificate and Social Security card, proved his citizenship. They finally let him out. That's not how it's supposed to work. Same thing happened near where I am. American citizen lawyer coming back from Canada. Illegally detained, illegally searched. Happens all the time. Here's an article that just came across. Two German teenage girls who were here visiting the United States following their graduation, their high school graduation. They came here legally. They did all the right things. They had this great adventure planned for themselves. They were nabbed at the airport. Let me read a little of this to you. Two teenage girls planning to explore the U.S. on vacation were thrown in jail and then booted from the country after Customs and Border Patrol found their loosely planned trip suspicious. Charlotte Pohl, 19, and Maria Lapierre, 18, arrived in Honolulu on March 18th with plans to travel around the islands for 5 weeks before heading to California and then Costa Rica after their high school graduation. However, the teens made the mistake of not booking their accommodations for the entire duration of their stay, which raised a red flag for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, despite both of them having obtained an ESTA authorization, electronic system for travel authorization. Quote, they found it suspicious that we hadn't fully booked our accommodations for the entire 5 weeks, Pohl told the outlet. What was supposed to be a fun, lengthy expedition quickly turned into a nightmare. The teens said they were questioned at Honolulu Airport for hours before they were subjected to full-body scans and strip searches. They were then given green prison uniforms and placed in a holding cell with long-term detainees, some of whom were reportedly accused of serious crimes. The young travelers said they allegedly had to sleep on thin, moldy mattresses and were warned by guards to avoid expired food. The next morning, they were told they were being deported, taken back to Honolulu Airport, where they requested to be sent to Japan. You're much safer in Japan than you are in the United States, even for U.S. citizens. They're not the only ones. Here's another one. In March, former Canadian actress, you may have heard of this, Jasmine Mooney, said that she was detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the southern border while trying to obtain a work visa after a previous one was revoked. Mooney, 35, claimed she was nabbed at San Ysidro border between Mexico and San Diego on March 3rd and held in inhumane conditions for 12 days before being released. The former actress described being kept in a cold room for 3 days at the world's busiest land border before she was arrested by ICE and thrown into San Diego's Otay Mesa Detention Center. I was put in a cell, and I had to sleep on a mat with no blanket, no pillow, with an aluminum foil wrapped over my body like a dead body for 2.5 days. She had come in at the advice of her lawyer. She had obtained a work visa. Anyway, she had a new job here. Countless stories, countless stories. This is happening all across the country. And if you are outside of the United States, a foreign citizen, thinking of coming to this country, you'd have to be out of your damn mind. Certainly, if you are anything other than white, you are in a great deal of jeopardy. But even that's not going to save you. These two German girls, white, they were nabbed, thrown in detention. You'd be crazy to come here, even if you have everything in order. These girls did it right. They had everything in order, but they hadn't booked their hotel for the entire 5 weeks that they were here. And so they found that suspicious. And so for that reason alone, they took them into custody, threw them in a jail cell. You'd be out of your mind to come to this country right now unless you absolutely had to. We are, you know how much money, just to put it in pure financial terms, do we have any idea how much money this is going to cost the United States in tourism dollars? How many businesses are going to be affected? How many people are going to lose their jobs in the tourism industry because people don't come here anymore? How many businesses within the tourism industry are going to go out of business. Same thing is happening in higher education. I have a great deal of experience with higher education, and I can tell you that foreign students are a very important part financially of the business model of a lot of institutions of higher education, because they come in and they pay full price for tuition. And I don't know if you've checked the price of tuition lately, it's insane. And so by foreign students coming here to go to college and paying full price, they make it more affordable for American citizens. They're actually doing American students a great service by coming here and paying full tuition. I'm not saying they all do, but a lot of them do. Foreign students aren't going to be coming here anymore in the numbers that they were. They'd have to be out of their minds. We have masked agents of the federal government, masked, unidentified, kidnapping a grad student in Massachusetts because she wrote an op-ed in the school newspaper at Tufts that the Trump regime doesn't like. So they snatched her up. As far as I know, it's been a couple of weeks now at least. As far as I know, she's still sitting in a detention center in Louisiana. And that was also in violation of a court order. Court said, don't take her out of this district until we can have a hearing. On a flight, she went down to Louisiana. And what they do is they when they kidnap these people and hold them, they take them down to red states, to MAGA states, states that support this evil, states that support the violations of our Constitution and rule of law, places like Texas and Louisiana, where they know that it's much easier for the Trump regime to get away with their lawlessness in those states. You know, people have to make their own decisions, but if you live in a red state, if it's an option to you, I would consider leaving. Could get a lot worse than it is now, and it's already pretty damn bad, but you know, everyone's got to make their own decisions. Anyway, I think you get the point. What's happening in this country is not only lawless, not only anti-constitutional, but it is also, to a large degree, evil. And I think it's fitting that Pope Francis looked in the face of its representative, the face of the evil that's taking place in the United States. He looked in its face and he had it lectured on compassion before he left. Well done, Pope Francis. Rest in peace.